All right, cool. Hello. Um, I just need to double check, make sure everything's good. This is the first time I've tried streaming on this PC. I think we're good. Hi. Um, how is everyone? So today I thought we'd check out Godot. This is a engine that I know nothing about. I want to be very clear about that. I literally do not know how to use it. So we're going to figure that out today. I have the C# documentation. We're using Godot Sharp version 4.0.2. And that's all I know. This could not work at all. It could go great. I don't really know what's going to happen. So that's the idea. We're just going to be poking at it and seeing what happens. If you have ideas, please let me know. If something is wrong with the stream, also let me know. I haven't streamed on this PC. I completely redid it, so it might explode. Hopefully not, though. So yeah, what I'd like to do today is get a platformer working. So at least a basic character controller working. So that means they can detect if they're grounded or not, and they can jump and they can move, and that's it. I think that's probably a good goal for entry level stuff. My normal like entry level project for anything is usually like Flappy Cube or something where it's just like Flappy Bird. So how do things move up and down? How do you detect input? Things like that. We're gonna do this and see if I like this more. So who knows? I honestly have no idea how this is gonna go. So yeah, I guess we're just gonna get started. As far as I can tell, Godot calls things nodes. So what we're used to in Unity with mono behaviors are now nodes. So we have nodes, and it seems like it's a tree structure, similar to Unity where you have nested components inside of each other. Godot seems similar. All of this is a guess. I have no idea what is correct and what isn't. You probably know more than me. So all I've done is create a new project and start the stream. So I don't know what any of this does. Right now we're in a 3D view for some empty scene. I don't know what that is. Good luck and thank you for the interesting content. Thank you. I hope it goes well. If you have any questions or suggestions, let me know. While I'm learning this as well, hopefully I'm doing this as a stream because hopefully this will be useful for some of you as well. I know Godot there's a lot of people with kind of like interest in Godot of whether it's something they should try or not. So I'm sure there's questions, and I definitely can't answer them, but we can explore them together. So yeah, I think what we should do is get an object into the scene, attach a script to it, however you do that, and see if we can make that script do things. I think that's kind of like a full circle of what we should probably start with. So if I do 2D, oh, wait. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. This is going to be really small for on stream. But on the left and right, there's actually numbers here. It's definitely not pixels. I don't know what that is. I don't know what these numbers are for. Or what they represent rather. Maybe it is like, I don't know. But there's some metric there. Interestingly, this is not like Unity where up is positive. In this case, as we pull the screen up, the numbers get smaller and smaller. So left to right is increasing, but then top to bottom is increasing. So we would actually subtract, I think, to increase this. This is the opposite of what you would do in Unity. But I think is similar to Unreal. I don't know Unreal, so I that's a guess. But this isn't the only game engine that does that. So what do I need to do? So this is our scene. It's an empty box thing. Can I save it? I don't know. Cool. So on the left-hand side, I've kind of covered this up with my camera because I don't really know where that goes. We have a file system here, which is just resources. That seems similar to Unity's thing, where you'd have a series of assets that you would include here. In our case, there is nothing except an SVG for Godot. And then up here, we have our scene. And so I can create a root node. So we create a 2D root node. And then it looks like I can start adding additional things onto that. Oh, I don't know what any of this is. So we have some HTTP requests, multiplayer stuff. We are not going to deal with that. Navigation, we don't care about. Skeletons and inverse kinematics also do not care about. Timers, that's interesting that that's its own separate thing. Canvas layer, I would assume this is for backgrounds and UI stuff. But then there's also Windows and other dialogues stuff. All right. So I don't think we need any of that. It does look like we need a node 2D, which is a 2D game object inherited from all 2D related nodes, has position, rotation, scale, and a Z index. So nodes seem like they're sort of your game objects and also actions and things that can interact with one another. So what I mean by that is that I'm pretty sure if we want to actually script this, if we want to actually write our own code to do something, we implement a node and then attach it to whatever it is that we want it to work with. So there's actually a lot here. This 2D thing has lots of different collisions. So 2D and shape collisions, I would imagine like this would give us like spheres or circles, cubes and boxes, etc. We have more navigation stuff and mesh stuff. I don't need that. And then a bunch of other things. Ooh. And then we have a tile map, which could be kind of useful for like our actual tiled graphics. I'm going to try not to touch graphics right now. Mostly just because that can be a way to sink a lot of time into something. And we don't need this to look good. We're just trying to figure out how it works. So there's that. Let's create a sprite. What did I do? So we created an empty sprite with no texture. Oh, this is interesting. There's all kinds of different textures. We can do like images, viewports. So like I imagine that would be useful for like rear view cameras or something. Or if you want like multiple views, if you're doing like a split pane view, like the old multiplayer couch co-op thing. Gradient textures. Sure, let's do that. So we get a black to a white gradient, I guess. What have I done? All right, so there is our thing. I don't know what I'm doing, but we have a thing. It's a box. Now what? Also, where is my camera? Do I need to add one? So they do have like a getting started thing at this point. And this might come across in some of the videos and stuff that I do. When I'm first learning things, I don't start with tutorials. I first see what I can kind of break and understand, and also kind of get a little bit of a feel for like how things work. That doesn't always work out great, but a lot of the times I found that can be a really handy way to kind of understand things. If I found that if I start with tutorials, I lean really heavily on them, and then I'm not doing the learning, I'm just copying them. So hello, welcome. So I think my question is camera 2D. Perfect. And there's our camera. And then if I play this, so in the top right, select the current scene? Question mark? Scene 1. um, sure. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it builds it. And I don't know what it did. But there's our game. Oh, hey, it works. Okay, so that's how the plane works. So unlike Unity, it doesn't render it inside of the scene view. It does. It seems like it renders something out into like a mono window or something like that. And then we get this. So there's our box. It's the camera is centered at 0, 0. I think we can move that. Also, something I want to test. Does that work? I'm going to move this over to another screen, but just to test myself. Okay, it does work. So these scenes are synced. What I mean by that is that what's happening in this debug window that we created is also happening in the editor, and the editor can also reflect changes back to our test scene. So as I was changing the offset of the camera, it was actually moving the camera in our rendered thing. That's good. So it means that we can actually use that to kind of figure out what's going on and test that. So that's cool. Now let's actually make this script move. So this is transforms. I think that's fairly similar to what you would get in Unity. This is Godot kind of does different things. Like Unity, almost everything is 3D based. Godot is the same way as far as I can tell. But these 2D nodes don't give you like a Z axis really. They do give you a somewhere in here. I imagine there's a Z offset. And so we can talk a little bit about how rendering works. I guess, question mark. This is not relevant to this, and I don't actually know how much of this works. But the way rendering works is there is a Z-axis in how things are actually rendered. If you're talking about like meshes, that doesn't matter so much because you also render a depth map when you're rendering things. But when you're talking about like transparent things like sprites, the pixels do not line up to everything else. So you might have like semi-transparent things, etc. And that doesn't really work if you're trying to write to a depth map and say, this is the depth of what's been written. Instead, you would sort everything that you're going to render from furthest to nearest, and you would render that way. And so transparent objects kind of render over top of everything that has already been rendered. And so that kind of gives you this layering effect. If you've used like Word or Google Docs, you might have like a move to front or move to back. Similar idea, but this gives you like more fine-tuned control over what goes everywhere. If everything just shares the same Z-axis, you don't actually know what's going to be on top and what's not. That doesn't really matter 90% of the time. If we were just rendering like a tile map of like the terrain, it doesn't really matter if tile A is above tile B, if they're just side by side. It's when things start crossing over one another. So like if you have vines that you want to hang in front of the player or something, then that becomes something that you care about. There it is. Z index under ordering. That makes sense. And ooh, relative Z. That's cool. So I'm assuming what that means is you can give it a Z index that is just going to be a number. And what does this say? Controls the order. A number with a higher Z index will display in front of others. So the higher your Z index, the closer to the screen you are. So the more likely you are to render on top of things. So we can mark this as relative, which I think means if this is inside of a tree of things. So if you have a player and they have like weapons or attachments or equipment or something like that, I think you can set that relative, and you don't need to like have an absolute set for each of them. You can just make it relative to what the other player is, and then kind of shift the player forward and back without having to go and update everything. That's kind of neat. uh, Render queues are interesting. It's something that I haven't really played with in a very long time. I should probably do like a refresher, and we should just like jump back to like the basics of rendering and do like the triangle and everything from scratch again. Because I haven't done that in years. And that'd be kind of fun to revisit, and also look at like how transparency works, etc. Because that's stuff that doesn't really show up. If you're using Unity or another game engine, you don't really get exposed to that. But it kind of pops up in different ways, or like you'll see weird side effects of those things impacting your game without it always being clear that that's what's happening. All right, we've talked a lot. I do that. All right, script or sprite 2D. We haven't looked at a tutorial yet, so let's keep going and see how much of this I can screw up before before this happens. So, as far as I can tell, Godot is based on Mono. How do I don't know much about Mono, unfortunately, but Mono is a cross-platform open source implementation of .NET that makes it possible for you to run things almost anywhere. And also, because of the way those frameworks work, it means that other languages can compile into it, and then that intermediate language gets compiled again and reused. So what this means is that we are going to be able to code in either Godot script or C#. There's also, I think, like Rust and other languages that have had support added for this. I believe there's also like Swift, etc. So whatever you're using, and then that gets compiled down into the Mono intermediate language, which I think is similar to what .NET uses. I think it's based off that, but I don't really know. And then when you actually run your code, that intermediate language is what actually gets run. So there's like a multi-part compilation that goes on. And that's similar to how like C# or Java works, where you compile into like a JVM or I don't remember the Java thing, but Java compiles down into jars that do something. All right, my brain isn't working. And then Java interprets that. So that's why you're able to write Java and Groovy and so forth all in the same language. It's also why Unity and other things can write C# and F# and other things that are also Mono compatible, and then just run them like normal. So we can choose either of these. I was thinking we were going to use C#. I don't know the trade-offs. But I know C# and I don't know Godot script. It seemed very like Python-y when I was quickly taking a look. But we can take a look at both. I wonder if you can mix and match. We'll find out. Move my box. All right, let's see what happens. Class name inherits from node. Okay. So object is the base class. Node is a inherited version of that. This is kind of neat that it actually shows you the inheritance structure. I'm assuming that's what this is trying to do. And then we could actually inherit from any of the native types as well. That's kind of cool. I'm not going to change any of this. And then we're just going to use the default node and see what breaks. What did I create? Move my box. Okay, perfect. So move my box extends node, and then we have ready and process. So process is like your, it seems like process is your update loop. And then ready is when the object enters the scene. Okay. That makes sense. Public override void. All right. Integrated editors kind of bugged me, so I'm going to quickly look and see if we can open this up in like Rider or something else. Nope. All right, cool. Yeah, okay, we don't get any IntelliSense, it doesn't seem like either. Because I would assume we'd get something if I type this. We don't. So let's try some Unity stuff and see what happens. Plus equals r delta. And then how do I compile this? This is part of the whole I have no idea what I'm doing thing. This is going to break because I just wrote Unity code here. And surprise, surprise, that doesn't work. No definition of transform. Okay. Cool. So let's actually go and figure out how we can actually learn how this works. So let's open this up. And so this is the Godot engine documentation for, I think, 4.0 question mark. Based off of this, that's what I think this is. I don't know where we are. Configuring an external editor. Perfect. Let's do that. Editor settings. All right, where else am I supposed to go? Oh, that's the wrong thing. Scroll down to .NET. Well, that doesn't seem right. Exporter.NET. There we go. External editors. Let's use Rider. I don't remember what was open in this, so who knows what's going to happen, but we're gonna see if this helps. I think this should also get us some IntelliSense when we do this, and then we can maybe revisit this. It just might take a little bit to open. I think that's all I had to do. Question mark? We'll see. While that's doing whatever it's doing, okay, so there's plugins to add support for Godot. It looks like there's different ones for the different things. It doesn't mention one for Visual Studio Code, so you might not have that. There is also a new, this was just released, but there is a new, what's it called? Like the C# developer kit for Visual Studio Code. Question mark. Yeah, C# dev kit. That's the one. So this is a new IntelliSense thing plugin for Visual Studio Code. I haven't tested it yet. I don't know how good it is. But it updates the IntelliSense support in Visual Studio Code with some new features. So potentially this is maybe a little bit nicer than like the OmniSharp stuff that we have used if you've used Visual Studio Code's C# support. This potentially could improve that a little bit. So it might not disappear as often, but you can use either one. So that's the thing. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about that. There we go. Rider. Trust and open. Perfect. So did I just open? Yes. I opened multiple of them. Okay. We're doing great. So I think the idea here is we need to update this so that it actually is using the correct things. Part of the maybe downside of using Godot versus something like Unity is that it's less mature. Maybe that's not the best way to say that, but it hasn't been around as long, and so the developer tooling and stuff isn't as integrated and nice, or it's fully featured as what you'd get in Unity. Similar to how you like Unity's developer experience wasn't always great. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was kind of a mess. It's gotten much better. I'm anticipating similar things happening with Godot. Especially there seems like there's a lot of interest in it right now. So I don't think that's just me. But it seems like there's a lot of people catching on and kind of thinking, hey, this is kind of neat. Oh, there's a whole bunch of things. I might need to do a whole bunch of other things because or is this like I don't know. It seems like there's like memory management and stuff exposed here that I don't want to play with. And I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. That's a little bit interesting. Um, Also, there's a lot more functions than I was expecting. And there's actions that I can tie into. How does this work? This is neat. um, okay. Uh, we're not going to get into any of this. I'm just getting very curious. Uh, so, how do I move this? This dot get child transform 2D. Oh, let's do that. All right, again, doing very Unity things. Must be referenced in order to use it as a parameter t. Got it. Okay. Transform 2D is a struct, so it can't be a reference, so that won't work. Translation doesn't seem right. Let's go and try to find the documentation. Core features. Cross-language scripting, we don't need that. Nodes and scenes. Script templates, that sounds fun. How to read the Godot API. Tutorials. All right. So all we want is to figure out how do I change the transformation of an object. And then from there, I think we can extend this to grab the rigid body. My understanding is there's like a way to do custom rigid body handlers. So you can actually kind of integrate custom physics handling into what you're doing and work with that. But I don't know how any of this works. 2D. Okay. Part of the challenge also, and this comes with learning new things all the time, is I don't know how their documentation is sorted. So it makes it getting through it a little bit harder. Unity has like a scripting documentation that I would go to for this question, but I don't really think I'm in the right place to go to that in Godot's. Like they have a class reference here, so I think I could go here, but I don't know what this gets me. Tutorials. Okay. It has a whole bunch of like RPC functions, which is, I guess, kind of interesting. Um, huh. Should I be extending a node 2D? Yes. That seems right. Okay. So let's try this. Because that actually has the things that I'm expecting. So if I go to node 2D and then do this, dot. Okay. So some changes from Unity here. They have global position and position, whereas Unity has, I think, local position versus position. So position dot x plus equals our delta. Is this a read-only thing? All right. So bar. All right. I think we've got this. So if we do a position like this, and then do position.x plus equals our delta, and then we can do this to set it back, and that should make it move right. Question mark. Okay. So if I've done this correctly, we're going to load our position. We're going to update that, and then we're going to reset this. And the reason this has to happen in 3 steps instead of 1 is because position is returning a read-only value. So it's returning a value that we can't modify, or if we modify a portion of it, like so I was trying to do .x, because position is a value, we wouldn't actually be updating the node's position. We would be updating the copy's position, which isn't what we want to do. That isn't actually helpful for us. So there we go. Let's see what happens. What should be taken? Reload. I think that worked. And then let's take our sprite, and how do I do that? So I just click and dragged, and now we have this symbol here to show that it has scripts attached. Is that what that means? Yeah. Okay, so now there's a node under here for our script. And I imagine I can do it again. Nope. Okay. So it doesn't duplicate them if you drag and drop multiple times. It just does it once. But now we have a script here. Presumably you can attach multiple, and then I think this script thing just automatically opens an editor for whatever script you're doing. So if I click that, I get my rider ID, which is kind of neat. And that only appears if you've attached a script to the object. I would also assume you can attach multiple of these scripts to the same object, similar to how you would do like multiple components and mono behaviors inside of Unity. But I don't know. So let's run this, and we should see this move. It's probably going to move pretty slow. Okay, but it is moving. Just very slowly. This is part of the thing of like having a speed. Would say no, you don't. You want to add multiple scripts? 1 script per node. Okay. So then how does that work architecturally? Do you make like composable scripts where your scripts have additional components that you attach to them? Or do you have like sub nodes that have other additional behaviors attached to them? What does that typically look like? Or 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 am I just completely off base, which is also probably pretty true. Okay. So this is moving very slowly. Uh, let's see if we can do like a live reload. So if I actually float, speed is 10. So if I do this and reload this, what happens? First off, okay, so that removes it. Quick load, open. That's kind of neat. But yeah, subnodes and connecting them via signals and stuff. Okay, so I was seeing a lot of stuff for like RPCs and stuff. Is this similar to how like Unity does events send to kind of send events back and forth between different components? One thing I do like is there's actually an override here, so we're actually implementing methods here. Instead of in Unity, it's just using smartly named, like similarly named things to make it work. This seems a lot nicer, rather than Unity's solution where it's a runtime error if your functions don't match. I like this more. Okay, let's stop this. Edit, clear, make unique. Interesting. Oh, and I can add like extra data onto my objects. Okay, this is something we're not going to play with right now, I don't think. But that could be fun. This could be fun as well. This whole public speed thing, I don't think that works. Or at least not the same way as like in Unity where that would expose it. The other option we have is something like this. This is mostly just taking what I know from Unity and seeing how much of it translates. It is not me saying this is how I expect this to work. just so we're all hopefully a little clear there. That isn't really my goal. I'm just kind of curious, like, how similar is this and how much comes across and how is it different? Partially because one of my questions is how do I build something in this? And I don't quite know yet. It seems like there's architectural differences. And so I've worked in Unity for a very long time. And so I don't you just have to think differently. Similar to how like coming from like XNA and monogame, also very different than Unity. There's a lot of different things that you have to do in those engines to make this work. So cool. It seems like it works though. We can change that and have it move differently. I just don't know how you would configure this. There's probably a way with like this metadata to pull things in. Okay, export. Let's try that. Yeah, I'm kind of expecting a lot of people to be kind of coming from that Godot script stuff. And so I'm starting with C# just because I know C# better than I know Godot script. It also seems like Godot script is probably a better place to start. If this is like something you're just picking up, if you don't know either language, starting with Godot script seems like a better choice. And it also seems like it has historically more support. So however much that matters, there's that. Let's run this. Oh, okay, got it. It does expose it up at the top here. So it adds all of your exposed variables, it seems like, all the way up to the top. So that's kind of neat. Just so we're covering all of our bases, let's create a new script. And do this. I'm mostly curious, can you mix and match these? I would assume yes. So you can see like the similarities. You have a ready function and a ready function and a process and a process. And then you just have funcs that do things. Extends, node, 2D, stuff like this. And then we would take, I'm assuming, all of this and undo that. This dot position dot for, okay, no capitalization. So position dot x plus equals delta times r speed. Is this the same issue that we were running into earlier? Speed is not declared. Got it. And no semicolons, right? So let's do that. Neat. So we can actually, I think, just swap this in. And now we have our test Godot script. And just so we know this is the correct one, because otherwise the behavior will be the same, this one will go backwards. And there we go. So now we have this thing kind of stepping backwards. Also, we didn't need a temporary variable here to store things as we were modifying this. So there are some differences there as well. I'm going to make this operate on the y. And I don't think we can add multiple of these. So if I just add another node here, how does this work? Because what I don't know here is I want this one to be our move box script, and then this node to also be our y-axis. So now we should have a diagonal movement in two different languages. I don't think you would ever do this, but I think this will be kind of a fun way to test out how we would structure this so that everything works. And then because this node has nothing attached to it, I would assume that we would only see this go horizontally, because I don't think this position is going to be against the root node. Yeah. And that can't be assigned to a node because of that. Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to think of like the best way to describe this, but it seems like you would have like a root node that is just your object, and just either a node 2D or a node 3D as like your root object for your whatever main thing you're doing. So if you're creating like a player, you would have a node 2D, and then you would attach nodes underneath that have the behaviors assigned to them. And then you would also have additional nodes attached to it to add things like art and sound and things like that. Is that accurate? Is that typically how things work? So not like what I have here. Instead, I think we would end up with something like a node 2D with like multiple nodes like this, and then like a art node, question mark, wherever the sprite thing is. Node 2D sprite. Something like that. Is that closer to how things typically end up looking? And then maybe you'd have like physics and stuff attached in there somewhere as well. But then like the root object of your main game thing wouldn't have any behavior associated with it. Am I understanding that, or does it tend to look differently, or yeah, I don't know. Anyway. All right, so we need to get our parent. So something like this. And then well, I guess we'll find out if this works or not. So now we're getting our parent node and we can operate on that. And now we have something moving diagonally across our screen. Cool. And we did this in 2 different languages. That I wouldn't expect you to actually use 2 different languages. That there's not really any benefit to doing that, but it's kind of cool that it works. Another thing I'm kind of curious about is test Godot script. I'm curious if your Godot code gets compiled into something that's accessible by your C# code or vice versa. I would just imagine it is, but I don't know how that works because there's probably some race condition somewhere in there that makes them kind of contend for one winning and one not. Either way, we've gotten distracted. So let's try to do physics stuff and see what I can break there. So if I start exploring this and look for a is there like a rigid? Yeah. Node has no shape. Okay. So it needs a shape. And this shape has no... And we have to create a shape resource? Question mark? Seems like we can just pick one of the predefined ones. So it has circles, rectangles, capsules, polygons, both convex and concave, and then lines, as well as rays. Just for this, let's do circles. Or rectangles? Is this actually like creating resources that I need to worry about? I don't think so. Okay, cool. So we created a rigid body. I don't know what that's going to do, but it's going to fall. I can click on it, I think. Oh, perfect. And then you get like a size and stuff. So if I go here, I did a thing. Neat. Okay. So there's our size. I need to figure out this coordinate system because it's very different than Unity, where like 10 is like the full size of your screen most of the time. How long have we been live for? That's a great question. About 50 minutes. We are exploring Godot. I've never used it. So if you're looking for somebody to teach you Godot, This is not that. But if you want to learn with me, welcome. That's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out how to build like a character controller for a platformer. I think that'll be a kind of a fun starting project. At this point, we've basically just figured out how to write scripts in both Godot script and C#, and set up our editor, and then kind of poked around at nodes and tried to figure out how this whole thing works. So that's what we're kind of playing with. A few people in chat are being very helpful. Aether Powered has been very helpful. And a few other people have had questions and stuff. So if you have questions about Godot, please ask them. Or if you know it and see me doing things that I should not be doing, please tell me, because that's how I'm going to figure this out. Yeah, part of the motivation for this is there is the Game Maker's Toolkit Jam is basically a month from now in July. And I would like to do that in Godot. Not because I think I'll make anything good, just because I think that would be a really fun way to learn more about this. And Godot itself has been on my learn this list for a very long time, and I just haven't had time. I've had a surplus of time lately, so it felt like a good time to go and explore it. So yeah, that's sort of what we're poking at. We'll see where this goes. Right now, I think what I'm trying to do is figure out how to do everything. Yeah. Well, they're the same thing. So highlighted on the scene is the collider, not the shape. That's because there's currently two things happening in this scene. One of them is the sprite that we had moving around. I've created a new rigid body that has a collision shape attached to it. And that shape is this. It's this outline thing. It looks like we can even change the debug color of our rigid body shapes. I could see that being really helpful if you're doing like sort of the fighting game thing where you have hit boxes and hurt boxes and you want those to be different colors. This seems like that. As far as I can tell, the way this works is rigid bodies need a shape assigned to them, and then that figures it all out. So yeah, unlike Unity where you would add like collider components, you'd add like shape components. This does the same thing. Godot just seems to really like nodes. So rather than having like this subsystem of game objects can have parent game objects and child game objects, and then those can all have components, and those components store all of the data, it seems like Godot has defined everything as like a tree, and each of the nodes in that tree have one responsibility, and they only do that one thing. That's seems to be what I'm understanding from this. I could be wrong. I think that's going to be one of like the big challenges for me, is figuring out how that structure all works and how it all kind of meshes with what I know. And also how to write code like that. That's always for me one of the like hard things, is changing how I actually structure projects. So I tend to really like writing things a certain way. This is different. So I just need to figure it out. But yeah, we get like this shape. And the thing is I'm moving this shape around. But I'm not moving the rigid body. So like if I wanted my player to be grounded, since the rigid body is at the 0, 0, you can kind of see like those red plus signs. Those are indicating where things are. It's highlighted red, I guess, when you've selected it, and doesn't get any bigger. So there it is. And then they're gray when they're not selected. But then we can actually move our shape to like wherever we want it to be. So yeah, At this point, I'm just going to treat this as our player. This is probably too big. Let's do 30 by 30 or 30 by 60. So you have like a player height type thing. And then there's a transform assigned to this. So let's do negative 30. That's going to take me a very long time to get used to. Negative is up. In Godot, that is different. I think Game Maker also is like that. It's been a very long time since I've played with Game Maker, but I think it also does that. Anyway, there we go. So we now have this. What I'm curious about, so I hid our sprite, so that's no longer there. But if I run this, okay, we definitely can't see anything. So far we've done both. We've written a Godot script. It's right here. Very simple. And then we've also set up Rider to do C# for Godot as well. Personally, I think I would probably use C#, and that's just because I know it. There's no other reason. I don't know if there's like other trade-offs that I'm not aware of right now. As far as I could tell when I was like briefly scanning through documentation, it seems like Godot script has better documentation and more tutorials written for it. And then C# is on top, and there's documentation. It seems like the documentation is fairly good and well written. It just seems like there's less examples and less other stuff. So maybe that's a place where this channel can kind of fit in. And we try to see what we can do with some C# and Godot. I haven't seen that many channels doing a lot of like Godot related content. I've seen a little. So maybe we do some of that. So we'll see. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for me to make a lot of videos when I don't really know what I'm talking about. But once I kind of get a little bit more familiar, that might be an option. So yeah. Now what? So we have our rigid body. We have our colliders. Let's also add some art. Just so we can actually see this when we're playing this. So let's do like a sprite. Or here's a question. Mesh. I don't know what I want. Oh. Okay, there's a bunch of fun 3D things. I'd be kind of curious to play around with like the CSG meshes. For those who are unfamiliar with CSG, it's a constructive solid geometry. It's very common in like Unreal. It's how a lot of their level design and stuff goes. Basically, it's adding and subtracting primitive shapes together, so to make other things. That could be really fun to play with. So let's just add a quick sprite, and we're just gonna call this our player art. Calling it player art. There's no art and there's no player. So we're doing great. Negative 30, we'll put that centered, and we'll create a new, I don't know. Placeholder texture. Perfect. That's exactly what we need. Region. Okay, that snapping is really handy. Cool. So placeholder, I think, just made us a very gross pink cube. That's cool that like all we need is just something graphical on the screen so that when I click run, we can actually see something. That's all I want. Oh, and our physics works. Perfect. So we now have like this falling cube player person. So let's go and do this. I'm going to remove a lot of this and cut out that node. So if my rigid body is colliding with things, does it have to collide with other rigid bodies or does it collide with shapes too? So if I just make this a shape, does this work? Let's do what is a world boundary? Well, that sounded cool. Okay. Now I'm curious. I think I just made something that the shape can't Nope, nope. That's not what that does. Maybe we should pay attention to the warnings. Area 2D, static body 2D. Okay. So this needs to have a static body 2D with that shape inside of it. And then we can run this and see what happens. And we just freeze. Okay. So that's not exactly what I was hoping for. Is this because it's a static body and so it's not recalculating physics? Is that why moving that in the editor didn't have an effect? Because I was assuming if I moved the static body out, that this would fall, but it didn't. And so I'm wondering if it's just like a physics was like put to sleep or something because the object froze. Also, your scene doesn't reset if you stop playing. So let's try this again and just see what happens. Oh, that also. Well, now I'm confused. Okay. I think it's really important to say I still haven't really looked at any documentation yet. So we've kind of just been poking at this to see what happens. And then chat has been super helpful. All right. Maybe we don't want a world boundary. Let's just do a rectangle. And then we can... Ooh, that's not right. Rotate this. I'm confused. What have I done? Oh, scale. Okay. There we go. And then we can stretch that a little bit, and it should make things a little bit taller. That might be why things were being weird, is because our scale was very, very wrong. And then if I move this down, so let's put this at like, not that, like 200Y. So we're basically creating a floor. And let's redo this. So we're going to do a node 2D, bring that up there, move that there, and do something like this. What I just did is kind of restructure things so that I can scale the sprite independently from our rigid body. I think that will make me a lot happier. And then we can stretch this a lot. There we go. And then our collision shape, that's all fine. And then let's take our sprite and make it bigger somehow. Here we go. And so now, if we run this, what I'm hoping to see is that pink box should fall onto our ground. Perfect. Okay, so we got there eventually, but now we have physics. Now we need to make this actually useful. So there's two things that I want to do. Our player is a physics body. So I'm going to go and do a node. And we're going to call this our jump controller. And again, I don't know how to structure projects yet. So you can see like everything is just going into one directory. I don't really know how to structure like the design of an object yet. We're still figuring all of that out. But what I'm going to do is create this new jump controller script. Like that. And we can just attach that to our jump controller. And then we're going to do private rigid body 2D parent. Something like this. So this will get us our rigid body 2D. That's the parent of our object. And hopefully we can do things. I believe there's a special like rigid body controller or something, like a rigid body handler or something. I don't know. But my understanding was that there's like some special way to handle rigid bodies, so you can actually have custom physics attached to the rigid body and like script how the rigid body reacts to physical interactions. I don't know what that is or where to find it. So we're just gonna manually do this. I also don't know how to do inputs. So that might actually be worth exploring the documentation for. Input. What all I want is keyboard input. Input events. Oh, hey, that's neat. Neat. Okay, so there's two different types. Unhandled inputs, and then an input map that we can define. So it seems very Unity-esque, so similar to how Unity has something where you can map inputs. Let's go try that. I didn't actually look at where that was supposed to be, so that was a mistake. Let's go project settings, input map. project settings. And where is that? Oh, tabs. Got it. Okay. So we can now define actions. So let's just create a jump action. Show built-in actions. Well, that's kind of neat. There's a bunch of actions built in. It looks like this is all for handling UI interactions. So like enter to do things, or tab to tab between things inside of a UI, just to kind of keep that consistent. We're going to create our own though. The dead zone is what you use on a controller to kind of control how much is on or off. It's sort of like that trigger point that it has to get beyond. It prevents controllers that are maybe a little old, that have a little bit of drift, from accidentally doing inputs. And then we can just map things. So let's map this to space. Space. Here we go. Neat. I don't know how similar this is to Unity. I know Unity's input manager can have some interesting issues with just how hard it is to like bind controls and things like that. You kind of have to do that beforehand, and rebinding it in game is kind of difficult. I don't know if this is similar. And you have the docs integrated into the engine, even though you're using Rider. Control click or press F1. Ooh. So I imagine like a lot of the same stuff happens here. So yeah. So a lot of their documentation, sorry, this might be a little small, is just actual code docs. And so this is how I would typically look at documentation anyway. It's all just here. You can see what it's returning, what it's talking about, etc. And that should also appear when you hover over it. So like in Rider and stuff, you get all this extra information. Yeah, it's kind of cool. So you say control click on code. Let's see what Godot does. So if we go here, back to our script, and like control click. Oh, that's really neat. Okay. So yeah, you can control click inside of Godot, and it opens up the actual documentation page. Well, that's neat. Oh, that's really cool. Okay. Thank you. Oh, this is super neat. Okay. Well, that's actually probably a good reason to start with like Godot script, actually. Because it seems like there's a one-to-one translation between what you're doing in C# and what you're doing in Godot script. They don't seem too dissimilar from one another. They're just a different language operating on the same thing. And then F1 to search. Oh. This is all very cool. Thank you. This is super helpful. So I don't think it would be very difficult to actually go from one of these to the other. The only thing that's going to be hard is the syntax change. Like this feels very Python to me. Like that's basically what I read when I see this, is just Python. And so that might be a simpler way to do it. There's less language restrictions on how you write your code in something like this. It also looks like typing and stuff is very loose. Like var test equals something. Like a lot of the types are just like any type. And so that might lead to like a bigger project with more people, that could potentially make it difficult to keep things straight and refactor things easily. But for a small project, especially if you're just learning this yourself, that isn't a big deal. And so, yeah, this is really neat. Thank you. Very cool. Okay, so we have our rigid body. Let's do this. What were we were looking at this. If our input is jump, then parent dot linear velocity. Equals something like this. 0 now this only works because I am not moving side to side. We'd be stopping our horizontal movement if I did this normally. But I'm just curious what happens here. So we're gonna do this every time I press the spacebar. I don't believe that's a hold. So input dot is action pressed. Oh, okay. So just pressed, just released, or pressed. Okay. So if you have multiple things assigned to this, like 2 different keys that do some action, like jump is W and space. If you press both of those and release one of them, that's a release of the input, regardless of which one you pressed first, it seems like. And then I think this will stay down. So we would, in this case, we're just going to set our linear velocity to -100, which would be straight up. And it should just stay that way until I release the key. That's probably not what we want. I think we want a just pressed trigger instead. But we're going to stick with this instead. Just because I think this will break, but it'll break in a fun way. And so we can use that to kind of learn a little bit, I think. We'll see. So we're on the ground, press space, and we just float up. And the reason we're floating is because the spacebar is pressed. And that pressed action is anytime the entire thing is down. So if we want to do rising edge, it would be just pressed. And if we want to do falling edge, it would be just released. So what that terminology means is if you think of your input as like this line that kind of jumps up and down, when you press the spacebar, the line goes to true. That's your rising edge. So that'd be just pressed, and it will stay pressed for the entire duration of that. And we'll release it, and it will drop back down, and that's the falling edge. So we have access to all 3 of those, it seems like, with is action pressed, just pressed, or just released. And so my understanding is this would be triggered if it happened or in between the next frame. Yeah, only on the frame that the user pressed down the button. So that's probably closer to what we want. Let's do public float jump strength. I will do like 1,000. I don't actually know a good number for this. I don't know the coordinate system or how any of this works. So, and then I think it's export to make it visible. I'm remembering. So we can export the jump strength so we can actually change that in the editor without having to go back to the script. Compilation is really quick, so that's nice. That was also another thing. One thing I have played with is actually inserting Godot into a GitHub action and using that to actually generate code live. That was taking an existing Godot project and just seeing what would happen with it, and then trying to publish that. That's something that you can realistically do inside of a GitHub action, and it actually works relatively quickly. Unlike maybe like a Unity publish, where if you publish a Unity game, it takes a very long time to build. I found Godot was built significantly faster, which makes it kind of neat for like those web games, because you can do WebGL builds with this. I think you can do that with the C# as well. Maybe that's something we can try. But that was something that I just thought was really cool. And then here, we need this to be our negative jump strength. Cool. And then I don't think like hot reloading or anything is a thing in this, so that's why I'm restarting the entire thing. But there's our jump, and we no longer just like fly into the sky. So I will fall back down even though I haven't let go of the space bar. I'm still holding it now. We're just sitting on the ground though. Every time I press it, we jump again. You just have to save the scene for it to reload. Oh. Well, let's try that. So let's do, instead of setting the linear velocity explicitly, let's do set axis velocity, or is there like an add? Add constant force. Sure. I don't know what this is, but we're gonna try it. So there's our jumping force now. And then let's also do if input.is action pressed, move right. And then move left. There's probably better ways to do this. Again, I just don't know them. So we can kind of brute force our way through the initial kind of startup bits and then figure it out. This will be our move speed. And we'll set that equal to like 100. And we just need to swap the sides of this. There we go. So that should get us left and right. We need to go and reconfigure our inputs to make that actually a thing. So project settings, move left. And move right. And we can assign this to A. Okay. Just typing A is, it turns out there's a lot of keys with A in them. There we go. Oh, Alt plus A. No, that's not what we want. There we go. And this will be our B. Okay. So our space bar is jump, and then we have A and D to go left and right. We can stack multiple of these inputs on top of one another, and I even have a controller here if we want to try that. So we could try throwing like a Xbox controller on there and see how that works as well. We'll do that later though. For now, let's just see if this works. And then I'm told if I save this, do I need to press the reload button? Let's not and see what happens. Okay. I'm gonna hit the reload button. Yeah, and then it rebuilds. There's probably a way to do that better. Key on the first row and on the second to detect the input. I'm not sure I understand. Can you help me a little bit understand what that means? I'm going to lock the rotation on the input map. So on the first row, hold on. Project settings, this. Key on the first row, not on the second to detect the input. I think. Oh, got it. First row instead, got it. So I can just hit D. Oh, hey, that's way easier. Okay. So let's actually, while we're here, somewhere. Sorry, my desk is a mess. All right. So if we plug our controller in, can I just do that? Well, this is fancy. So I just use the D-pad on my Xbox controller to set all that up. Okay. I'm a fan of that. That was super easy. And okay, we go very fast, but it works. I just set up a controller and used a controller in like a minute. I love that. That is awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that tip about using the input listener. I'm very used to Unity where you type it out. So that is much easier. We should add like a cap to our velocity, I think. Is there a way to do that? So this dot parent dot move. I'm not multiplying any of this by the delta. That's why it's so fast. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Also move and collide. So let's try this instead of adding a constant force. We can use the constant force for our jump, I think. I think that makes sense. But move and collide, I think makes more sense. This way. So move and collide this times the delta. Okay. That delta being a double is, I don't know about that. That's kind of, there's a lot of conversions it seems like it seems like you're going to have to do because of that. And maybe I'm missing something, but yeah. Anyway, let's do this move and collide. And so the benefit of this is now a constant value. So we're not going to have acceleration like we did. We can program that back in by doing like some ramp or something. But this is actually going to calculate collisions and move our object for us. And so it should prevent us from like moving through things. But it should also allow us to actually move our object, and we can set this up to do it in a way so it'll handle things like slopes without us having to like run off them or turn them into ramps or whatever else. So I think that should be nice. Let's find out. Now that we have a controller supported, I'm just gonna use the controller because that doesn't seem right. We're gone. It also felt like we were sticking to the floor. Never mind. But that's not right. um huh. Physics process. Okay, let's try that. Is it okay to handle input inside of physics process? Or is that bad? I feel like, because in Unity, this would not be something you'd want to do. That would potentially cause like missed inputs or something because they're on different loops. So also, no suitable method for override. Huh. This is interesting. Okay. Files can't be undone. Okay, I don't know what I did. Let's do this. We'll convert these back to a float. And there's all of that. We could still figure out how to do like ramping on this, but I think it's fine. What I don't know so this actually returns collision information, so we can actually detect what we hit and react to that. Huh. Okay. But why? What's causing us to fly into the air? um, I I don't really understand that part. Because we just sort of like fly away, and I don't know why. Right. So we have this, and everything's fine. I can. Oh, that doesn't work either. Huh. I have no idea what I've done. Because this was working, but now it seems like our collision or something is not quite right. I guess we can experiment a little bit more. Let's do like move a little bit faster and jump a little bit less high. And see what this does. But yeah, none of that seems right. um, and I don't. Huh. Flying is kind of jumping. So if I add a constant force. Oh, that keeps being applied over time. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Add force. Okay. So we'll do like linear velocity plus equals this. Or equals that. And then we'll just use linear velocity for vertical and the other stuff for everything else. This is a mess. I'll probably think of better ways to do this in the future. I do kind of want to build a platformer, so there's a lot that I need to think about. I don't need to worry about slopes. I don't intend on building slopes into the game. So that's not an issue, but figuring out the best way to handle this kind of stuff is probably important. Apply force. Thank you. Okay. So we do that. Apply our force. We don't need a delta because this is going to be a single impulse jump from a grounded position. So I want it to be this. And then we just need to add the if is grounded check here, which we don't have right now. So let's refresh this and see if that worked. All right, so we're much faster. I don't know why we fall into the ground when we stop. Also, we don't jump. Did I get my... No, jump strength, negative 1,000. Okay. You know more than me, so I appreciate the suggestions because I wouldn't find these anyway. So thank you. Let's see if this works. So I don't know the difference between these, but that seems right. So there's our jump. Oh. Okay, that's a little bit odd. Can you only do one move per frame? Is that what's happening here? Because presumably this velocity is using that move function that I'm already using. And then this, I use that when I hold left and right. I don't, it's fine. You don't need to feel sorry about that. I appreciate it because you clearly know more than I do. And so it's super helpful. Yeah, so thank you so much. My guess on what's going on here is that this can only happen once. Like this is a queued thing or something, and then we can only call this once per frame. And so one of these is like getting ignored, or the velocity is like not happening, because you can see we actually snap down. Like if I do this and then stay up here and then let go, we fall faster than you would expect. But but it shouldn't behave like this to begin with. So I think I should choose one or the other of these and not use both. I think mixing and matching these is probably not a good idea. We're going to keep it though, just because that's not what we're trying to solve right now. And we do have left and right movement. We've explored different ways of moving in physics. We know how input works. We've bound a controller, got that all set up, done physics. Now we need to detect is grounded. That. And so our jump is going to be if we're grounded and we press jump. Now, how do we detect if we're grounded or not? Parent dot gravity scale, lock rotation. I don't think there would be anything attached to our physics body that would tell us this. Is on floor. What is that a function of? Let's go figure that out. Should I be using a character body? I didn't even know that was a thing. Character body 2D Godot. Alright. We can switch. I don't think that's a big deal. Canvas node object. Oh, interesting. Let's try it. This seems interesting, so let's just try it. Worst case, it doesn't quite work, and then we can just go back. It is not that big of a deal. So how do I change this? I suppose I don't. I just create a new one. Character body 2D. And then I can take all of these and apply it to that and then delete this. Oh, not like that. Like that and then like this. This isn't going to compile, I don't think. Yeah. Because we're expecting a rigid body and that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, I didn't see anything on it with a rigid body. We could detect collisions and then manually calculate it, but that's more complicated. If it already exists, let's use that. I can swap node type on right, change type. Oh, well, that would have been a lot easier. Neat. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this needs to become a character body 2D. And so we still have move and collide, that's still a thing. And then is grounded is going to be equal to our parent dot is on floor. So right now we're just checking out Godot. I also want to build a actual platformer. I years ago designed this platformer that was also a tower defense game and kind of want to rebuild that. I think it would be really fun. And I mostly just want to learn Godot. I'd also like to use Godot in the Game Maker's Toolkit jam in July. So I kind of want to figure it out before then. I found it's not a great idea to like learn an entire engine. Okay, so is on floor. Is grounded. This, we just need to figure out how to do velocity equals this. Is that all we need to do? That wasn't too bad. But yeah, so that's sort of the idea. Godot has been on my I should learn this for a while. The Godot PlayFab plugin also kind of caught my eye, and I would really like to play with that. So there's just a lot that I would like to poke at. So yeah, that's pretty much where this is. There is no grand scheme though. It's just another tool in the toolbox at this point. And then we can kind of figure out if we pivot more towards Godot or do more Unity stuff or whatever. But it's really hard to make that decision if you don't actually know what Godot is. So that's what I'm hoping to figure out. Does our stuff... Nope. Okay. So physics goes away. But we can still move. But we're not grounded because there's no gravity. Got it. Okay. So we need to add gravity. How do I add gravity? This dot parent dot gravity. Or we could just do velocity plus equals new vector 2 0 and 9.8 times our delta. Like that, question mark. And so that should drive us down, I think. Because again, positive numbers are down in screen space. So I think that should cause this. And then if this is anything like Unity's character controllers, that gravity doesn't exist. Well, oops. Why didn't that work? Move and slide? What's the difference? If it collides with another, it will slide along the other body rather than stop. Oh, move and slide sounds cool. So let's use that. Yeah, after this, I was planning on taking a look at their platformer example. Because Godot does have, for people who are unfamiliar with Godot, Godot does have template projects that do everything that I have done so far in this stream. And they do it better. I just wanted to start and like figure out how this worked. So my goal is kind of finish this and then take a look at some of their like generated code. They have a few different ones that I'm a little bit curious to kind of just take a look at and see how they work. And then figure out how to do that. But also I find example projects feel overwhelming to me if I don't understand the platform. That maybe this is just a me thing, but like if I open up a big game project, even if it's a relatively simple game and I don't know where to start looking for things, it just feels like a lot. And so starting from scratch and building something really simple and then taking that and unpacking something more complicated makes me understand, like it gives me that foundation to kind of build off of. And so that's how I tend to like to work. It's sort of why the videos on the channel kind of are structured the way they are, because I like poking at things and kind of tinkering and learning that way. So move and collide or move and slide. Wait, so... Oh. Oh, this is neat. Okay. I get it. Um, sorry, I get it. So we do something like this, move and slide all the way at the bottom, and then every other operation inside of here is just going to be a function against this. Sort of like this. This will be a plus equals this. And then we're going to set a max speed, I think. And we'll set it to like 50. And then I'm going to cap our horizontal speed. We don't need to cap the vertical speed, I don't think, but we're going to do a var velocity equals our parent dot velocity. This is because this is a reference type, so we can't just grab it. And then what we need to do is do velocity dot x equals math f. Math f, what? Why are there two? Let's use Godots. That's a little bit confusing. There's two mathf libraries. And we're going to do a clamp. And clamp the float of this velocity.x between a negative max speed and a positive max speed. And so what this should do is allow us to sort of have that acceleration ramp up to a point, and then we should stop and max out at whatever our max speed is. And so we can use this kind of like have a little bit of scaling speed back and forth. So it doesn't just feel like we immediately change directions by hitting a button. And we still have, like, we don't infinitely ramp up because that's a little bit silly. And then we call move and slide at the very end. What this does is moves the character based off of the velocity. And if it would collide into anything, it slides along that surface, applying the force that it had to everything that it hits. So like if there were a box there that we just run into, like a rigid body box, we can add one of those. We should be able to push it if this all worked, which is neat. So let's, okay. Gravity is a little slow. But also I didn't add any friction. I should do that. And then our gravity is really bad, so that's never going to come back down. But still, that's kind of neat. Okay. So I think all of this makes sense. Let's go and add a box. A box. There we go. A rigid body. Like this. And we're just going to add a shape. Collision shape. We're going to give it a actual sphere box. Box will work. And then let's add a sprite to it. And we're going to give that a placeholder texture. Like so. And whoa. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to move that there. This is 20 by 20, so let's make this a 20 by 20 sprite. There we go. A 20 by 20 sprite. That's what I want. Here we go. Perfect. And then let's grab our rigid body and move this. Not like that. Okay. Selecting and moving things is a little bit kind of clunky. Also, this slide is a lot. There we go. And then we can grab. No. How? Okay. There we go. Okay, Alt. Got it. So if you hold Alt, you'll actually grab the thing that you want. And so what I should be able to do now is run into that box and push it. I think. If I understood the documentation correctly. We should now be able to actually move this. Nope. Never mind. Did I misunderstand that move and slide thing? Because the way I'm reading this documentation, moves the body on velocity. If it collides with another, it slides along it rather than stop. If the other body is a rigid body 2D, it will be affected by the motion of the other body. Oh, the relationship is inverted. It's not saying that I can push objects with this. I don't think. It's saying that if I moved onto a rigid body 2D or something, I would inherit its movement speed. So when the body touches the moving platform, the platform's velocity is automatically added to the body motion. Got it. Okay, so like this makes moving platforms actually work. Because if you've ever tried to make a moving platform in a game, the static friction thing that you expect to happen in real life doesn't really happen in games. That just isn't really a thing. So you have to like parent it or do something, and this seems like it handles that for you automatically. But it doesn't do what I thought it did of pushing boxes when you run into them. We would have to like program that. Okay. That's cool. And we didn't really, that was just a tangent anyway. So that's really cool. So are we just falling really slowly because my math is wrong? And like I should be increasing our gravity just because this is operating in like pixels or something instead of units? Because our character is like 60 units tall, which is very, very tall. And so I think I just need to get our gravity number to a reasonable thing and our jump to a reasonable number. Grounded, up direction, slide on ceiling, yes. Okay. Jump controller, jump strength, what's this like? 300? We're just guessing for as far as numbers go. Still too much. And I should probably just have a gravity thing that I can attach to this, but because yeah, this still feels very floaty. So I think if we were doing like realistic gravity to a realistic player height, I think we'd be looking at more like 150 something around there. So it's 9.8 meters, so this is probably even higher than that. Because the person is like 2 meters tall. Our character is 60, so 60 times 4 is like 250 or something. This is probably going to be too high of a velocity or of a gravity. I'm also going to export this. Public float. Oh. Gravity. let's try this. So we give ourselves a gravity, and we can use this to adjust this and tweak it a little bit better. But then hopefully this kind of gives us the two knobs that we need to get this to feel good-ish. Okay, cool. So we basically, at this point, we sort of have a character controller. It's a very basic character controller. Like, I don't, this isn't great, but it works. And we sort of figured out how Godot kind of works as well. To make this all work, add a camera. So camera 2D, that's what's making it so we can see. And then character body 2D. Everything is sort of node based. Exactly. Sort of baby steps and sort of figuring it all out. I imagine we'll be able to pick this up pretty quickly. It seems like most of the design decisions make sense, which isn't always true for things. But this seems mostly coherent. So I think we can pick this up pretty quickly and hopefully actually build something with it. I have a lot of small game ideas that would be really fun to kind of just like hack together. And hopefully some time, especially for the rest of this month, to kind of do some videos. So hopefully we can do some more of that. I don't really have plans. I've kind of been on a vacation, so I don't really know what I'm going to do, but there's probably going to be videos. It might be Godot related, it might be Unity related, also might be streams. I would just like to build things again. So I'm kind of getting back into that step of things. So yeah, if there are Godot related things that I can kind of cover, let me know. Because I don't really know where the gaps are or like much about the ecosystem. I've been in the Unity world for years now, and Godot is still still very much like a black empty box for me. So I don't really know what would be helpful to like build content around or show. I can just kind of like work on projects and add things where it fits. But if there's specific things that people are like, I'd be really curious how this works or how you would do this, that might be really, really helpful direction to like figure out what we should build next. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining and helping out. I definitely wouldn't have gotten this done without without all of your help. Also, I think kudos to Godot for having really intuitive design. We barely touched their documentation. Like the only things that we really looked at was inputs to figure out how to do an input event and the character body 2D class, and that's it. And we basically created a character controller just from that. That's really cool. And that isn't something that is always very easy or intuitive to figure out. So I think that's really neat. Yeah, I'll probably be poking at this. I've been trying not to set a schedule, just because I don't want to. I would like to get back into doing more consistent videos, because it's been, at this point, like, I did 3 videos in April, and haven't done anything since. So I need to be a little bit more consistent there. But yeah, other than that, I'm kind of going to just wind down the stream, I think, and think about how to take all of this and turn it into a project that we can actually build together, I think, and do something fun. So thanks again, everybody, for joining and asking questions and giving feedback, and sharing your experience with Godot, because this wouldn't have been the same. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. So whenever that is, I guess I'll see you there. So Till then, see you, internet.